My name is Elise and I'm an alcoholic. Um, my sobriety date is July 7th of 2025. I am coming to you guys from Iowa City, Iowa. I am the co-chair of the IPA 10 Do 10 Again conference that we will be having up this upcoming summer. So yeah, I guess kind of just what I wanted to talk tonight about is kind of just about the first three steps in the various stages of both addiction and then recovery, relapse, and then when I've come back to the program. So yeah, so just kind of going into my story, I think it's easiest to start of kind of where I came from. So growing up in Iowa, it was a very just Midwestern grow up atmosphere. Mom and dad both worked very stereotypical jobs. I grew up in the two kids, big house family. It looked pretty perfect from the outside looking in, but on the inside, it was just kind of falling through the cracks. Parents also were also addicts and controlling and abusive in different ways and stuff like that. So I kind of found myself picking up alcoholic tendencies long before I even started to drink. From a very young age, I was very hyper focused on being the best in everything that I could be, lying to be able to be the best in everything that I could be, manipulating to be able to be the best that I could be in any way. Just mostly because I wanted to be able to both impress people, but also to try and set myself aside from other people to show that I wasn't like everyone else. And so that continued on into young adulthood and it got me into a lot of trouble. And that's still spiraling into before I even started to drink. I can still remember my first drink. I actually thought alcohol was freaking disgusting because I decided to mix scotch with Kahlua because I didn't know what I was doing. It was disgusting and nasty. And so the first time I drank, I was actually pretty steered away from drinking for a bit. And then I was just the good girl in high school that was involved in everything, mostly to try and get out of the house so that I didn't have to be around my family that much. Moving into college, though, I got pretty heavily into the drinking scene. I joined a sorority and just discovered that I could drink everyone, including the frat boys and the football players, under the table. And that slowly just became more fun for me than education, even though education had been what I'd liked in the past. And so I just decided that after a few experiences that I had in college that I could be a successful bartender because if I could drink that well, I could also make drinks that well while I was drinking. Logic, right? And I then just decided to take that on the road. I met a partner and they were much older than me. They were also a little bit further into their addiction than me, but I didn't see it as addiction at that time. I just saw it as a way to get out of my hometown and get out of Iowa. And so we started traveling. And through those travels, I moved to a few different major cities in the Midwest. And even though I was the younger person, was kind of the person that was spearheading all of the financial things for us. My partner's addiction issues had just fallen so deep that they weren't able to really provide much for us. So, and I wanted to keep up the lifestyle that I had gotten so used to living. I still wanted to go out and have fun every night. So I was working all these high end bartending jobs, making some pretty decent money, but my addiction was like slowly catching up with me because I would make all this money and then like I'd go out on a bender. Next thing you know, back to having no money. So that's when kind of the different necessities of addiction came in, finding different ways to make money, got into various jobs that some people see as unsavory, and just to be able to make ends meet at some points, to be able to just buy booze, even if I wasn't making ends meet because I could just move into a new apartment type mindset. All of this kind of continued happening for quite a few years, moved around a lot. My car broke down in Wyoming after I broke up with that partner, and that was like kind of a saving grace for a little bit. I worked at a ranch out there. Everything was great until you kind of realize that the cowboy mindset is still very much so what you've seen in the movies. They just sit around and drink and ride horses and shoot guns. And so I kind of fell right back into addiction when I was there. And it spiraled into some pretty dark drinking there. I got a few people fired from a job that I was working at because of my addiction. They found bottles that I had hidden in a restaurant that I worked at, and they got let go for it, and I never owned up to it. So that brings me deciding that my life's kind of in shambles, and I should move back to Iowa because that will fix all my problems. And I actually don't have any problems. I just need to move home. I moved back to Iowa, just continued bartending when I first got back and spent the first year, few months living with my parents because after everything that I'd spent all my money on, I didn't have money or funds to get a place of my own. Finally moved into my own place and I went out pretty hard one night. At this point, I had already kind of started realizing that, yeah, I did have a problem that I couldn't stop, but I also didn't want to stop it. My goal wasn't to be alive after like the age of 35. So I didn't care. Like I was live fast, die young type mindset at that point. And I went out as a Jewish person to see Santa Claus. And that night just kind of spiraled pretty quickly. I got drunk enough where my best friends, who are also addicts, cut me off, and I got pissed off at them. So I just left and went to a different bar, telling them I was going home. And still to this day, I don't remember how I got back to my car. I got back to my car somehow and drove home, crashed my car into a few parked cars. It got stuck. I called the cops on myself because I couldn't drive away from the crime and I didn't know what else to do. So I dialed the non-emergency number because it wasn't an emergency. No one was hurt. And I got arrested with a .421 BAC, completely cognitive, like aware of my surroundings, everything. So just the perceived BAC was a lot lower than the actual blood alcohol content. And that wasn't even enough for me to get really scared into a problem. I bailed myself out of jail the next morning and walked to a third shift bar and started drinking right away, right after I got out of jail. And then went on like a month long bender. And at that point was like when I was getting withdrawals in the middle of the night. I'd had that in the past, but it was consistently happening all the time. I finally had my substance abuse evaluation that you have to do for a DUI. And I think I surprised myself more than I even surprised my family when I told the social worker that I did need help, that I finally was ready to say that this was a problem, more than I was able to control on my own. So I went to one of the best places in the whole world, the treatment center I went to. I am forever grateful for that place. I'm still so close with so many of the people that I was in treatment with the first time. Um, that's foreshadowing. I just really learned a lot about myself and stuff there. And when I got out of the treatment center, I started a new job right away. Bad idea, switching jobs in early sobriety. But I wanted out of the industry, so I got out of the industry. And then I just kind of replaced my drinking habits with AA habits, which is not something that I would recommend because my whole life was centered around drinking before. And then all of a sudden, my whole life became centered around AA. Like I was losing sleep because of AA things and like just way overdoing it, honestly. And I got completely burnt out and resentful and very resentful towards AA. I actually was on the bid committee before my big relapse for IPA 10. So started doing things like that, just getting more involved, starting to help chair things. And all the while for the last like month, I was super active in AA. I was heavily drinking. I was drinking before meetings. I was drinking after meetings. Sometimes I would leave a meeting because I was like, shit, I didn't drink and now I'm getting shaky. Um, and then just spiraled, stopped going to meetings, it got really bad. And I went back to that treatment center. I don't really remember calling them, but they brought me back, which is so amazing. And I met another amazing group of people there. But more importantly, I went there because I actually needed to and I wanted to. I was going there for myself this time instead of going there because it was like the nudge from the judge or the push from the parents. I was going there because I finally was like, I saw what sobriety could give me. And then I saw how bad it could get, how quickly it got that bad. And I wanted what I had in those few weeks, months that I had sobriety after I left treatment the first time. So I checked in there July 7th, was there for 30 days again. I wanted to get my 30-day chip there. And I left. And I left this time making some big changes in kind of how I approached AA as a whole. I didn't dive right back in. I picked the 3 meetings I knew I'd really love. I picked times that I knew would work with my work schedule so I wouldn't get overloaded. I turned down a promotion when I was in treatment, which is crazy that I got offered a promotion from my same job while they knew I was in treatment. But anyways, I turned down a promotion right away or just didn't declined an interview opportunity because I didn't want to do what I did last time and completely change my life and stress myself out. And so I continued on with the job I had before. And I just really focused kind of on I found a great sponsor even before I left treatment. That was like one thing I did when I got in there is I found someone who could help me find an amazing sponsor. And I I just really focused on the things that I wanted to do because I didn't get sober to just get sober. I got sober to live. And so I really wanted to like focus on different activities and things that I could do. But I've also found this time in sobriety that there's different things like WIPA and IPA and like all the different things. Like I'm going to quite a few conferences coming up that I can also like experience that isn't feeling like it's being a forced thing, like it's something fun that I'm doing to also further my recovery. So where this brings into like the 12 steps, I like just kind of want to go back through the different stages of my story and just kind of look at those first three. So before I even was an alcoholic, I admitted I was powerless. I was powerless over power. I wanted control. My lives were becoming unmanageable because I couldn't keep up with the lies that I was saying, even though I wasn't drinking yet. I still had different friend groups that knew me as different people. And then when I came to believe in that power greater than myself, at that point in my life, it was alcohol. That power greater than myself was alcohol, because then I could blend the lines between everyone. And then I made that decision to turn my will and my life over to alcohol. Like that was what I saw as my higher power. Then going into recovery, that was the first time I admitted that I was actually powerless over the thing that I thought gave me the most power. My life had become so unmanageable that I even surprised myself by saying that it was. Coming to believe in that power greater than myself, I was really resentful against higher power and God like that. But the higher power that was greater than me at that time and moment was that treatment center that I was checking into, was that social worker that told me that, yeah, I'm definitely in trouble if I don't stop drinking. And I did believe that they could restore us to sanity, restore me to sanity more so. Not that it necessarily would, but if I believed in it enough that it possibly could. And then I made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. To me, that was willingly checking into that rehab facility. And then I just kind of did that Uno reverse card and I started looking at those steps backwards when I fell back into my relapse. I took away my will, or I took back my will. I turned it over and then I was like, give it back to me. I actually can do this on my own. Shocking. No, I can't. I started to go back further and further into that insanity. I believe that the power that was greater than me, like the rooms and things like that, were actually out to get me when actually all they were concerned. And then I started to think that, oh, maybe I wasn't just powerless over alcohol. Maybe I was just powerless over my situations, my people, places, and things. And that was what I needed to change instead of just the drinking, even though the drinking was the same no matter where I was, who I was with, or when it was. And then after that relapse, I really had to take a deep look at myself and realize that, like, even though I could admit that I was powerless over alcohol, I really did it while saying in the same breath that our lives had become unmanageable. I didn't take that pause that that dash shows. I needed to look deeply into the fact that my life was unmanageable. And then I also needed to come to believe that a power greater than me can change. My higher power to me changes all the time. My higher power is constant in the fact that it loves me and that it knows it has its will, not mine. But my higher power doesn't have to be the set in stone block of a thing or a person. It can be fluid. Life's fluid. You never know what's going to happen the next day. And so thinking of it in that way, where it's just something that is ever constantly with me, and here for me, but not overbearing me, that started to restore me to sanity. Because I was way overthinking it. Like I love the acronym KISS, keep it simple, stupid, because I overcomplicate absolutely everything. And then my making a decision to turn my will and my lives over to God, I think that that one came so much easier after my relapse, because the first time it was such a power struggle. And then the second time I was like, please take it. I don't want to do that again. And it's a constant thing. I have to do it every single day. Sometimes I have to do it a few times a day, like especially on days where I'm having cravings, which by the grace of God is very, very few and far between. But like on those days, I've never drank if I just every, like, even if it's every 5 minutes saying, God, please don't let me drink today, or God, thy will, not mine, but God, please don't let me drink today. I'm a firm believer in going to bed as early as you need to. If you need to go to bed and just say, God wills, not mine, but I'm going to sleep so you can do what you will with me in my dreams. um, so yeah, I don't know. So that's a little bit about my story, where I came from, kind of just a viewpoint of like different stages of the first three steps. And so yeah, with that, I'll pass.